Imagine waking up one day and discovering that everything you believed about life wasn't exactly true. It's not the kind of revelation that comes with a bang. It's more like a whisper in the back of your mind, a silent restlessness that arises even when everything seems right. You have a job, a roof over your head, friends, maybe even a certain level of success. But you still feel that something is missing, something you can't quite put your finger on. Have you ever felt that? This feeling is not random. It's the beginning of awakening. Now stop and think. What if your life was being led by ideas that you never really chose, beliefs that were placed in you before you even had the awareness to question them? The answer may seem daunting, but it's simple. Yes, you were programmed. We all have been. From our earliest years, we are exposed to an invisible system made up of rules, expectations, standards. You learn that you have to study, behave, be productive, consume, win. But nobody stops to explain why. Have you ever noticed how even your desires have been shaped? Did you really want that car, that lifestyle, that degree? Or did you just learn that you needed it to be accepted? Here's a curious fact. According to Gallup, 85% of people in the world say they are not engaged in the work they do. Even so, they keep repeating the cycle. Why is that? Because we've been taught that questioning this system is dangerous, and indeed it is, not because you'll lose everything, but because you'll find something much more valuable, your own truth. But beware, discovering the truth is not comfortable. It's like taking off a pair of glasses you've been wearing all your life and realizing that the world was never as it seemed. In this video, you won't get ready-made answers. You'll get questions that make you uncomfortable. Because that's exactly how transformation begins, with discomfort, with doubt, with courage. This content has only reached you because, in some way, you've already felt this call. You've heard of the Matrix, you probably have. But what if I told you that the real Matrix isn't made up of machines or digital codes, but of thoughts? The real prison is invisible. It has no bars, no walls. It's built inside your mind. And the scariest thing is that you don't even realize you're trapped. From the moment we are born, we are bombarded with ideas about what is right, what is success, what is happiness. Study, work, consume, start a family, buy a house, retire. All this seems natural, but who decided that this is the right route? Not you. The concept of the mental matrix is based on the idea that we live within a socially implanted belief system. These beliefs run so deep that we believe them to be our own, but in fact, they are a type of programming. This concept is not new. In 380 BC, Plato wrote the allegory of the cave. In it, people lived chained inside a cave, seeing only shadows on the wall. For them, those shadows were all that existed. The light outside, they didn't even know it was possible. This metaphor has crossed the centuries and has become more real than ever in our time. Today, the shadows are the social networks, the standards of success, the ideals of beauty, and the life goals that tell us who we should be. Current studies in cognitive psychology show that more than 90% of our daily thoughts are repetitive and unconscious. In other words, we are literally living on autopilot, with inherited, unchosen ideas. But here comes the question, how do we get out of it? The answer is simple, but it takes courage. You need to start doubting what you've always believed. Buddha, more than 2,500 years ago, was one of the first to understand that human suffering comes from illusion, from the mind. He abandoned his wealth, his title of prince, and went in search of something his eyes couldn't see. He discovered that liberation does not lie in things, but in the way we perceive them. Centuries later, Jesus said that the truth will set you free. But he wasn't just talking about religious dogma, he was talking about the truth within, the truth that no one can impose, only discover. Nikola Tesla, the genius who laid the foundations for modern electricity, said that the secrets of the universe lie in energy, frequency, and vibration. But he also knew that the greatest human blockage wasn't ignorance. It was resistance to change. Spiritual awakening begins when you understand that reality is not a fact. It's an interpretation. The mental matrix only has power as long as you feed it with unconscious obedience. When you start to observe your own thoughts, to question your automatic reactions, something changes. The prison reveals itself. And when that happens, it loses its power. But beware, awakening doesn't mean abandoning the world. It's about seeing the world as it really is, without the filters that have been placed over your eyes. And that can hurt, because when you open your eyes, you realize that you've been living in a bubble for years. But it's also liberating, because for the first time, you have the chance to choose who you want to be, for real. Have you ever had the feeling that you're always busy, but rarely doing what really matters? It's as if there's an invisible force pushing you towards commitments, goals, obligations, and at the end of the day, even with everything done, there's still an emptiness. This is no coincidence, it's by design. We live in a society that feeds off our constant attention. The more distracted we are, the easier it is to control our choices. The busier we are, the less room there is for reflection. The system doesn't want you to think. It wants you to react. It wants you to go with the flow, without questioning where it's going. But here's the most important part. True freedom doesn't start outside. It starts inside your mind. Many believe that they will be free when they quit their job, end a toxic relationship, or have enough money to do whatever they want. But that's only half the equation. The other half, and the most difficult, is realizing that the most powerful prison is the one you've built with your own thoughts. Ever since you were a child, you've absorbed patterns of behavior. This is right. This is wrong. You have to be someone. You can't disappoint. These phrases have become internal rules. But think for a moment. Did you really choose these thoughts? Most of our worldview has been inherited, not created. And as long as we don't recognize this, we continue to act like characters in a script we didn't even write. Creating your reality doesn't mean living in a fantasy world. It means taking responsibility for the meaning you give to things. Two people can experience the same situation, but react in completely different ways. Why is that? Because what determines your experience is not what happens. It's how you interpret what happens. And that's where the real power lies. When you change the way you see, you also change what you experience. Now think about your time. Today, do you decide where your attention goes? Or is it captured by notifications, automatic tasks, social obligations? The average person touches their cell phone more than 2,600 times a day, according to a study by Discount, 2016. Imagine how much mental energy is drained, not in conscious choices, but in automatic stimuli. The modern system is designed to keep you distracted. Advertising, social media, information overload, it all works like a mental fog, and the more distracted you are, the easier it is to make you follow patterns without realizing it. But there is a different path. It starts with a choice. Rescue your energy, protecting your focus, redefining what you really want. It doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with small steps. Ask yourself, is this important to me, or does it just seem urgent? Make time for silence. Notice when you're on automatic and choose to get off it. When you become more present, you begin to notice something curious. The reality that seemed immutable begins to respond differently. People change, opportunities appear, and above all, you feel more whole. Because in the end, the freedom you were looking for outside was always inside. Do you remember the first time someone asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Maybe you didn't even know how to tie your own shoelaces yet, but you were expected to give a ready, safe answer, something like doctor, lawyer, engineer. The question seems innocent, but it's actually the start of a much deeper process, the construction of your identity based on external expectations. This is the first step in social conditioning. From an early age, we are inserted into a system that doesn't teach us to think, but to obey. School in most countries follows a model created in the 19th century, based on training workers for factories, rigid timetables, rewards for repetition, little room for creativity or questioning. In 1971, the philosopher Ivan Illich wrote that schools do not educate for freedom, but for conformity. And even 50 years later, this criticism is still frighteningly relevant. After school, we enter the professional world. The promise is clear: study, work hard, achieve stability, and you'll be happy. But the reality is different. According to Deloitte 2023, almost 60% of 18 to 34-year-olds feel trapped in careers that don't reflect their personal values. Yet they continue. Why? Because the fear of looking like a failure, of not working out, of disappointing their parents or society, speaks louder. And to deal with this disconnection, we enter another cycle: consumption. We buy clothes, gadgets, cars, trips, not because we need to, but because we've learned that having is a sign of success. The logic is simple. If you don't feel good on the inside, compensate on the outside. But there's a problem. The more we consume, the emptier we feel, because we're trying to fill an existential hole with material things. And the most dangerous thing is that this system is fed back by external validation. Likes, compliments, diplomas, promotions. With every congratulations, we feel validated, but without realizing it, we shape our decisions not by what resonates internally, but by what generates approval. And this comes at a high price. Little by little, we move away from our own essence, and we start living a life that looks beautiful on the outside, but makes no sense on the inside. No wonder anxiety and depression have hit record highs in the last decade, especially among people who theoretically have it all. But there is a way out, and it starts with a simple question. Is this choice really mine, or is it what they expect of me? You don't have to give up everything overnight, but you can start making choices that are more in line with who you really are. Seek learning outside the formal system. Redefine success based on personal fulfillment, not status. Practice silence to hear your own voice, not the world's. Social conditioning doesn't go away easily, but it loses strength every time you choose consciously. From childhood, we are taught to avoid fear, to ignore it, to suffocate it. But we are rarely encouraged to listen to it. What few people realize is that fear is not the enemy, it's a messenger. Every time you feel that chill in your stomach when considering an important change, a new career path, the end of a relationship, the start of a risky project, fear is signaling something. It is pointing to where there is growth. Fear arises when we leave the known zone, and leaving that zone is not comfortable, but it is necessary in order to evolve. Now here's a powerful insight. The same mechanism that protects you from real threats, like a wild animal or an accident, is also activated when you think about being authentic. When you consider going against standards, disappointing expectations, challenging social norms. The human brain biologically associates social acceptance with survival. For thousands of years, being rejected by the group was a real threat. Today, that threat is emotional, but the brain can't tell the difference. And that's exactly where fear becomes an instrument of control. Have you ever stopped expressing an idea for fear of judgment? Have you ever followed a safe path, even though you knew it wasn't what you wanted, just to avoid disappointing someone? Have you ever silenced your own truth in order to fit in? This doesn't happen by chance. Social structures have been shaped so that the fear of rejection keeps most people in a predictable bubble. A bubble where everyone thinks the same, acts the same, and rarely questions. Whoever controls fear controls the mind. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's action in spite of it. You don't have to wait for fear to disappear. In fact, it can be confirmation that you're heading in the right direction. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and survivor of Nazi concentration camps, said that human freedom begins when we choose our attitude towards circumstances. And that choice requires courage. The courage to be honest with yourself, courage to disappoint other people's expectations, courage to become who you are, and not just who they expect you to be. Buddhist monks practice staying silent for days not to eliminate fear, but to observe it clearly. Samurai trained their minds to walk side by side with uncertainty. Mystics like Rumi said that fear is the door through which love enters. It's not about getting rid of fear, but about using this energy as a compass. The next time you feel that uncomfortable feeling, ask yourself, am I afraid because it's wrong or because I'm about to do something real? The answer may surprise you, because deep down, what we fear most is not failure. It's becoming someone we didn't know before, someone free. Once we start questioning the world around us, a new challenge arises, facing the world inside us. Because even when we break with social standards and face our fears, there is still a little explored territory, the mind itself. Self-knowledge isn't just about knowing what you like or what you want out of life. It is, first and foremost, learning to observe how your mind works and realizing how many of the ideas in it have been inherited rather than chosen. But how do you start this process? The answer lies in conscious silence. The practice of meditation has been used for millennia as a tool to calm the incessant flow of thoughts. But it's not just for relaxation. It allows us to see clearly. When you sit in silence and just observe, without judgment, you begin to notice how your mind automatically reacts to everything. A thought arises, you feel something, and within seconds, you're already trapped in an internal story. Meditation isn't about stopping thinking, it's about stopping identifying with thoughts. Little by little, you realize not everything you think is true, and not everything you feel is final. This realization is liberating. And here comes another essential concept, detachment. Many people associate detachment with giving up everything, as if you had to live with the bare minimum. But true detachment is internal. It's letting go of the need for control. It's letting go of the obsession with being right. It's stopping defining yourself by positions, labels, achievements, or even traumas. You are not your opinions. You are not what happened to you. You're not even what others expect you to be. When you start to let go of these layers, something new emerges, presence. Being present is different from simply being here. It's being whole in the moment. It's eating mindfully, walking while feeling the ground, really listening to someone without thinking about the answer. In practice, this means living now, not in yesterday or tomorrow. Most people live reliving the past or anticipating the future, but life only happens in the now. And it is in this space of presence that the mind begins to reorganize itself. It is at this point that mental conditioning is deconstructed. Automatic patterns of behavior begin to break down. You realize that you don't have to react as you always have. You can choose a new response, a new way of seeing, a new way of living. It's an ongoing and sometimes uncomfortable process, but it's there, in that discomfort, that you find yourself. Self-discovery doesn't happen all at once. It happens in pieces, each time you let go of a belief, a rigidity, a lie you've told yourself. And little by little, without effort, your essence emerges, not as something you create, but as something you rediscover. Imagine you've lived your whole life inside a dark room. On the wall in front of you, shadows move. Projected figures dance and disappear. They are all you know. Now imagine that one day someone says, "Those shadows aren't real. There's a world out there." This is the essence of the allegory of the cave, written by Plato around 380 BC. In the story, Prisoners chained since birth see only shadows cast on the wall by objects passing behind them. For them, those shadows are reality. They don't know that they are only seeing reflections, distorted versions of the truth. If someone managed to break free and leave the cave, they would see the real light, the real objects, the sky, the world. But when they returned to tell others, they would be discredited or even harassed, because the truth bothers those who live well with illusion. This metaphor is still incredibly relevant today. Today, shadows don't come from torches. They are projected by screens, television, social media, advertising. We live surrounded by images that tell us what success is, what love should be like, what is beautiful, what is right. But who decides that? These projections are so frequent that they end up becoming invisible. You believe you're choosing, but often you're just repeating what you've been conditioned to believe. The illusion of reality isn't just outside, it's in the filter through which you interpret everything. For example, if you've been taught since childhood that being productive is a person's main value, you'll probably feel guilty when you rest. If you've been taught that money is the only sign of victory, you may ignore deeper experiences, such as connection, authenticity, and purpose. This is because we live within an invisible system of collective beliefs. They shape not only what we think, but what we think is possible. Have you noticed how the system encourages competition rather than collaboration? How it rewards those who fit in and marginalizes those who question? These are not natural rules. They are social constructs designed to maintain a stable, albeit limited structure. And when someone starts to look beyond them, the system responds with irony, with rejection, with fear. After all, when someone wakes up, they become an uncomfortable mirror for those who are still asleep. But there is a way out of the cave, and it doesn't require physical escape. It requires mental clarity. It begins when you decide to look closely at what you previously accepted as normal. When you realize that reality isn't something fixed, it's interpretable. It is constructed by narratives, symbols, and repetitions, and if you change your gaze, you change what you see. The world may remain the same, but you are no longer a prisoner of shadows. Now you know that none of what binds you is physical. There are no chains on your wrists, no walls around you. The prison is in the ideas you've accepted without question, but the truth has been placed in front of you. And with it comes responsibility, because once you see the system, you can no longer pretend it doesn't exist. You understand that school has trained you to obey, that the standard career doesn't always reflect who you are, that consuming doesn't fulfill you. And that fear is used against you to keep you where you are. All this has been revealed. And now comes the real question. What are you going to do with this knowledge? You can go on with life as if nothing had happened. You can go back to your routine, pretend you didn't see it, or you can do something different, and you don't have to change everything today. But you can start with a choice, saying no to something you've always accepted out of convenience, saying yes to something you've always avoided out of fear, to think for yourself, even if no one else understands. Don't wait for an ideal moment. Don't wait for someone to come and set you free, because that's not going to happen. Real freedom doesn't depend on external conditions. It begins when you decide to take control, when you stop living on automatic and start responding consciously. You create your life based on the decisions you repeat, the thoughts you feed, the truths you choose to follow. And that choice is yours alone. Most people will continue to sleep, and that's fine. But if you feel, even deep down, that there is more truth, more meaning, more life, then maybe you're ready. And if you are, don't ignore it. Because from now on, you're no longer just a spectator. You are responsible for the story you write from here. The question that remains is simple. Are you going to repeat the script or write your own? Now it's up to you. If this content made sense, don't stop here. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content. Now, watch this next video where I show you another essential step to change your reality.